Hi. Capitalism's next crisis. Why Gen Z is losing faith and how to win it back. Young adults increasingly view capitalism skeptically, not because it has failed, but because their realities don't match its promises. They've grown up amid stagnant wages, overwhelming educational debt, and unaffordable housing. They've also been inundated with headlines about corporate irresponsibility, such as major banks facing scandals for unethical lending practices, or technology giants mishandling consumer data or designing algorithms that don't exactly have their best interest at heart. The question, of course, is whether their criticism and skepticism are justified. In my experience, it's a waste of time to argue with people's lived experience. There's no doubt that our current system isn't delivering sufficient value to everyone. But the real question is, are these failures or feature of capitalism or a bug? I passionately believe they're bugs. Like any system, capitalism has its flaws. But we don't fix broken code by throwing out the entire program. We fix it with focused, intentional upgrades. Why Gen Z feels left behind? Millennials and Gen Z are not inherently anti capitalist. Instead, they're reacting rationally to economic realities that haven't matched expectations. Heavy educational debt, coupled with limited career advancement opportunities, has fostered frustration and mistrust. As shown in the graph in the post, millennials and Gen Z increasingly see socialism as superior in addressing various core economic issues, particularly healthcare and childcare, highlighting their deepening dissatisfaction with capitalism's current form. Economics commentator Kyla Scanlon captures this generational mood with her now viral term, vibe session. It describes how, even when economic indicators look strong, many young people still feel left out of prosperity. In an interview with Barry Weiss on her podcast, Honestly, Scanlon explained that despite being part of one of the wealthiest generations on paper, many young adults feel economically sidelined. She describes this as the felt economy, where groceries are more expensive, housing feels out of reach, and career momentum is elusive. Challenges such as not being able to afford a home span economic classes and educational levels. Even highly educated young adults who pursue degrees expecting guaranteed economic stability find themselves burdened by debt, stuck in stagnant industries, or entirely disillusioned by unmet promises. This shared frustration across socioeconomic groups deepens skepticism towards capitalism, reinforcing perceptions that the system disproportionately favors an elite few. As Konstantin Kisin, the Russian British satirist and co host of the Trigonometry podcast, told the 2023 Alliance for Responsible Citizenship conference in London, I quote, "Many of you here are conservatives. I'm not. I look terrible in tweed. That's why I identify as politically non binary. But I can tell you, conservatives, something. You will never get young people to want to conserve a society and an economy that is not working for them. We will not overcome woke nihilism as long as young people are locked out of the housing market, unable to pair up, unable to have kids, unable to plan for the future." End of quote. Capitalism is still the best system to lift the tide, but not all rowboats are being lifted. That is why addressing these barriers is not charity, it's strategy. I agree with economist Tyler Cowen, who argues that restoring young adults' faith in capitalism will require reviving its core dynamism. That means enacting policies that reward long term thinking, support entrepreneurship, and invest in education that prepares people for a rapidly changing labor market. So, how is media fueling anti capitalist sentiment? Well, today's fragmented media landscape profoundly influences how capitalism is perceived. Social media frequently amplifies distorted views of capitalism, accelerating negative narratives and misinformation. Foreign interference and deliberate propaganda further amplify these misconceptions. As we discussed in this article, and as cognitive psychologist Steven Pinker points out, whether or not the world really is getting worse, the nature of news will interact with the nature of cognition to make us think that it is. End of quote. In other words, persistent media negativity can create the perception that capitalism is failing, despite clear indicators of progress. Scandal emphasizes that media disproportionately highlights negative economic narratives, such as highly competitive job markets and persistent economic uncertainty. As she puts it, quote, even though the stock market may be up, the vibes remain down. Why? Because not enough Americans even participate in, let alone benefit from, public markets. End of quote. She further observes that people are much more drawn to the narrative of socialism than the economics of it, because oftentimes the economics don't work that well, but the story sounds pretty good. Emotional appeal, in other words, is outpacing economic literacy. Cowan calls this phenomenon negative emotional contagion, arguing that years of collective trauma, from 9/11 to COVID, have made Americans more negative about everything, including capitalism. Quote, there's something about negative sentiment, he says, especially across people. It feeds on itself and becomes stronger. End of quote. How might perceptions of capitalism shift if media coverage consistently highlighted successful entrepreneurial ventures and ethical business practices? Clearly communicated capitalism's authentic strengths and limitation is critical to reshaping public opinion. Many young adults view capitalism as inherently exploitative, believing it inevitably concentrates wealth among a privileged few. Often, though, this perception arises from real but correctable distortions, monopolies that suppress competition, or cronyism where corporations benefit from political favoritism and unfair subsidies. These are not flaws of capitalism itself, but failures in enforcement, ethics, and oversight. It's essential to distinguish between a system's principles and its abuses. When we conflate the two, we risk discarding a model that, when guided by integrity and transparency, can deliver widespread prosperity and opportunity like it has. This skepticism is often reinforced by narratives that frame social and economic systems as oppressor-oppressed dynamics, casting inequality as capitalism's inevitable outcome. But at its core, capitalism is built on voluntary exchange, mutual value created through freedom and consent. When monopolies or corruption distort these exchanges, they violate capitalism's foundational promise. Rebuilding trust means addressing those distortions directly and visibly. And if we take a wider view, the data tells a more nuanced story. Yes, income inequality has risen, but so has overall prosperity. Since 1980, the average American income per capita has nearly doubled relative to other developed nations. These gains, though unevenly distributed, reflect capitalism's ongoing ability to generate real material progress. That's something often lost in today's dominant narrative of decline. Despite all the skepticism, capitalism indeed has a powerful built-in advantage: its capacity for innovation. Entrepreneurship and innovation are core aspects of capitalism and sometimes referred to as innovationism by John Mackey, as discussed earlier in this series. That they can provide and address the economic concerns of young adults. Innovative market-driven solutions like modular construction or co-living arrangements, exemplified by companies such as Cohabs, are directly addressing housing affordability. Income-sharing agreements and employer-sponsored education programs aim squarely at alleviating educational debt. The gig economy and remote work opportunities offer flexible and purposeful careers that traditional employment often lacks. Historically, capitalism has demonstrated adaptability in effectively addressing significant challenges. Economist Maxwell Tabarrok points to capitalism's track record of addressing societal externalities through technological innovation, citing cases like pollution reduction and public health improvements as evidence that market-driven progress can often outperform coordinated interventions. So capitalism adaptability is no accident. It reflects its core strength, the ability to harness human creativity and innovation to solve complex problems. Scanlon is cautiously optimistic that private sector innovation can meet the moment. Some of the hard tech investments that's been going on is promising, and that is private markets solving problems. Why honest communication about capitalism matters. The bridge To bridge the growing gap between skepticism and understanding, we must communicate transparently. That means acknowledging capitalism's strength and its limitations through real, relatable stories of entrepreneurial success. Improved economic literacy also plays a vital role. When young people understand how capitalism works and how it can be shaped, they're more likely to engage with it meaningfully rather than feel excluded by it. Blindly defending the system serves no one. What builds trust is honesty, a willingness to confront capitalism's flaws, address valid criticisms, and commit to tangible improvements. In fact, the most compelling advocates for capitalism are often those who have grappled with its imperfections and still believe in its potential to be a force for good. Like me, building a capitalism young adults can trust. The future of capitalism depends on demonstrating clear societal value beyond profit. Young adults expect businesses to prioritize transparency, accountability, and sustainability, values that are increasingly central to capitalism. Young adults seek diverse, inclusive workplaces that provide meaningful careers and opportunities for positive social contributions. In my interactions with young business leaders, I've observed their passion for developing companies that blend profitability with strong ethical commitments. Businesses already practicing ethical capitalism enjoy substantial rewards from consumer loyalty to attracting more motivated, purpose-driven employees. Young adults increasingly reject companies focusing solely on shareholder profits, seeking instead meaningful, purposeful careers. Widely adopted, these practices demonstrate capitalism's potential to align profit making with societal good. We must genuinely acknowledge and authentically address the concerns young adults have about capitalism. Doing so won't just help rebuild trust, it can lay the foundation for a stronger, more inclusive economic system. Bill Clinton said it best: "There's nothing wrong with America that cannot be cured by what is right with America." My take is that he was speaking, at least in part, about the power of our free market system. If we're willing to confront its imperfections, including its occasional corruption and blind spots, we can let its strengths do what they always have done: overcome its weaknesses. Next in the series, in the next and final article in this series, we'll explore how focusing capitalism on rewarding long-term thinking can address these concerns and create lasting benefits for future generations. Your turn. As we work to reshape capitalism into a trustworthy model, consider what specific changes in economic practices and business culture would earn your full trust and active support. Your answer could very well shape the future we build together. See you out there.